Hello, everybody. This is Daryl Arnold, and I am the host of Power Talks, and it will be premiering on Preach the Word Network on Wednesdays, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to be interviewed, or if you have a business idea, or if you even have commercials or something like that, get at me so we can get you on, all right, this show, and make sure that we can give you some power and give the people that's around you the power that you have inside you. Let's get it. Love, peace. Hit me up on all my DMs, and I'm gladly to get back at you. All right, let's get it. Welcome back to another episode of Power Talk. I have a special guest with y'all today. She is a great person. Y'all really want to take some notes. I'm actually taking notes myself as I'm doing this interview because she is great to have. So she is an educator, an author, and so much else. I want to introduce my girl, Miss Marianna.
Thanks for
How
having
you
me.
doing?
Doing wonderful. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
John, thank you.
Yes. So where you from?
So I was born in Detroit, but I've been raised in Sacramento, California. So I'm definitely a Cali girl. I was in Detroit long enough to get my Detroit soul, some of that Motown soul, but I'm a Cali girl all the way around.
Okay, so you know a little Motown, huh?
Little something, little something.
Oh man, that's great. So how long you been in Cali?
All my life. My mother came here with me when I was a little 16 months old, just a little bitty thing. So this is my whole experience here in California in terms of being raised in Sacramento. So since I was a wee little thing.
Oh man. So I know you a great educator in the community. So I just want you to just introduce and what your work is and what you stand for as a person.
Right on. So I am what's called an edutainment specialist. That means I sit at the intersection of education and entertainment. As a young girl, I always knew I wanted to be a performing artist, and I definitely pursued that. My mother did an excellent job of making sure that I was active in the community. So, singing, dancing, theater, poetry, eventually emceeing, just all the way around, a performance artist. And somewhere in my 20s, I started kind of looking around and noticing a lot of my performance friends who were very gifted, very talented, were also very afflicted with a lot of mental and emotional health issues, right? Like it was almost like we kind of used our pain as our inspiration, which is beautiful, right? We can turn a lot of pain into beautiful things. But I started to also study history. My mother put me in a lot of Black history, made sure that I knew a lot about history and culture. And I started noticing a lot of my favorite theater artists, actors, singers, just a lot of our gifted people, a lot of their demise or a lot of their experience was because of the trauma that they went through. So as I moved forward, I went into journalism. And that's where I started getting heavier into public speaking, helping people to tell their stories, understanding that, yeah, it's great for me to be a public speaker in a performance, but it's also about being able to share opportunities for other folks to tell their story. And so that's where the entertainment kind of, got its roots in community. A little bit of activism here and there, working with the community, feeding the homeless, feeding the youth, doing advocacy and things like that. So where the education kind of beefed up, if you will, or deepened is me finally sitting down and decided I wanted to go to school for communications and getting a little deeper with the journalism. I've done projects with NPR and Capital Public Radio, learning how to produce and shoot and write and all those things. So I started noticing the more and more I was gaining storytelling and getting stories from the community, I was like, man, this trauma thing is really serious. And that's when it led me to a lot of what my life work is now. And that's grounded in mental health, emotional hygiene. I became a mental health first aider, which I help people when they're dealing with different modes of psychosis to help them get some of the calming of the heart and the mind necessary so that they can move forward and recognize some of the trauma healing that they can do. And so now I've combined all of that, my love for art, my love for storytelling with my love for public speaking and teaching on mental health, emotional hygiene, and just public health and safety. So that's how I became an edutainment specialist.
Wow, I think that's a lot. I think I gotta write down everything you just said. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm still shocked by everything that you went through.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
a
So so what was it for you? Like, was it anything particular that you saw that you just like, hey, maybe I need to get into this? Like it was something personal that happened in your life to be like, hey, maybe I need to sit with this emotion, or maybe I need to sit with this and see what is going on with me. And then it kind
absolutely.
of transpired to something bigger.
Yeah, so I come from a family that has experienced domestic violence, sexual violence, just a gambit of things that were really rooted in violence in the home. And so, watching my family members experience those things, and I started kind of embodying a lot of anger, right? A lot of anger out of wanting to protect those in my family who experience this depth of different varieties of forms of mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And so as I was blossoming and going through my teenage years, I had a real bad attitude problem. And I wasn't born that way. It was, the byproduct of being witnessing secondary trauma in my home. And so, kind of already having that backdrop within my development, and seeing how some of that anger started seething inside of me, and then getting out into the public as an artist and seeing these common themes. And a lot of my friends, my homeboys, my homegirls, people in the community, I realized like, oh, this isn't just an issue in my family. A lot of us in the community are suffering, and we don't have a lot of access to the tools that we need. We don't have as many programs. And if there are, we don't want to admit like, I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. Like, we don't really want to admit to maybe the depths, or we're just not aware because it's the norm in a lot of our communities. And so the combination between some of those personal experiences and witnessing my family members go through it and feeling powerless, and then witnessing a lot of my peers in the artist community going through it, as I moved forward and got into journalism and public speaking and advocacy, those were some of the main issues that I wanted to deal with, is the impact of trauma on various stages of development. And now it's showing up in all the work that I do, which makes it a little bit more purpose-led, right? Like when it hits home and it's something that you're connected to personally, when you're serving that life purpose, it's a little bit more intense in a way that it means something. And so none of my work is just going through the motions for a paycheck. All of my work is directly connected to family experiences, life experiences, and that's what makes it so much more meaningful for me. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So when did you feel powerful? Because I know that you just said that you was powerless. So when was that time that you was like, hey, I feel powerful when I do this? When was that time?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I would say that I always knew as a performance artist, I was powerful because even at a very young age, like in school talent shows, I was like, oh, I know how to grab the audience's attention, right? Like I figured that part out. But then as I got older, especially in hip hop and being a female MC, or a woman MC, a young woman MC, I started realizing like, I don't want to compromise myself and talk about topics that aren't really me just to be the best female rapper alive, right? And so I didn't want to compromise, some of the values and the morals that my mother and my family and my community tried, to instill in me despite some of the struggles that we had. And so I was like, okay, well, if I could be powerful on stage, if I can rock the mic, if I can host an audience and gain attention, if I could be a leader, where am I leading people to? What am I going to do with that? And so I always had the power of artistry, but I had to understand the development and growth that I had to go through personally to do some of my own trauma healing. And then naturally, as any artist does, once we grasp to new ideas that inspire us, we amplify that and magnify that in the way that we speak in our poetry, in our dance, and our theater, whatever it is. So it was a personal transformation that I had to go through to kind of own my stuff, right? And be very honest with maybe some of the negative choices and decisions that I made in my life as an outcome of some of the secondary trauma I witnessed in my environments, and really own that and say, okay, I can either be a victim forever and I can be mad at myself and mad at the world, or if I really want to live this positive life and give, the world and this planet that I came to life and inspiration, I need to work on myself first. And as I make those baby steps to improve, my outlook, my disposition, my energy, I can apply that artistry and that power of being able to draw attention to actually lead people to feeling good. I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to talk about depression unless it's by virtue of trying to heal it. And I see in a lot of artists and a lot of pop culture, there's a lot of people that have the power of being artists, but the feelings and the emotions that they are, romanticizing and making cool, that's not necessarily the lane I want to do. So a lot of the work I'm doing is counteracting, especially with young people, like, yo, you don't have to glorify, negativity and deadly and depression and anxiety and pill popping and a lot of these things that are really after effects of being traumatized. You can actually go within, heal that. And I guarantee you the message and the things that you're sharing in your art and your music and your advocacy will follow along accordingly.
Oh man, that is beautiful. That's what I'm all about. I love to talk about positivity, and because pretty much everything I listen to, for the most part, I love it. I love old school music that's talking about love and uplifting. And you're talking about poetry. I like to dibble and dab in some poetry as well. So I'm glad that you're on that same wavelength, and I thank you for really, really talking about that and actually giving it up to the people that transpire. So who inspired you as you grew up, and who inspires you now?
So growing up, my mother is strange. My mother put me on the Billie Holiday very young, right? And so in this strange way, she wasn't necessarily this big positive person, because the way history has written it for a long time, they kind of just wrote her off as a drug addict. And so she's another example when we think of a lot of artists like Billie Holiday, when we think of Nina Simone, when we think of artists who had this grand gift and talent, but didn't get some of that healing, and there were some things that made them deteriorate. I was actually drawn to people like that, like, wow, all this greatness, all this potential, all these gifts, and all the world seems to remember and document about them was maybe their addiction or their, afflictions. And so my mother exposed me to, those kind of jazz artists, those kind of singers of the era. And, I thought Nina Simone was like the best thing. And at a young age, my friends was like, who? Like, that led me to the Lauryn Hills and people who are definitely influenced by them. The Lauryn Hills, the Jill Scotts in their music and their poetry. And so I think, Nikki Giovanni, who is definitely one of the best, baddest poets, around, who takes like the real experiences of life, but then empowers you. I never really liked, I really favored people who took the grit in the reality, but also showed resilience through their gifts. So like I said, the Billie Holidays, the Nina Simones, the Nikki Giovannis, the Bell Hooks as authors, the Toni Morrisons, people that really looked through the spectrum of what the Black female experience was about and didn't omit some of the painful parts of it, and then balanced it out with their gifts. And so now as I move forward, I think I'm actually revisiting a lot of those people with a different viewpoint and perspective. So it's interesting that you said that, as I was exposed to them as a young age, but I probably didn't know the full impact of what it was. I was more drawn to their art form. So now when you ask me who inspires me now, I'm kind of going through this loop and revisiting their bodies of work and getting a new form of inspiration from them, because now I'm seeing with my trauma-informed lens, like, yo, they were using their art to heal themselves. But if they had just a little bit more support, if they had, people pouring into them and not just wanting their gift, but also supporting the reality of some of the struggles that they were having and giving them tips and tools, how much longer would they be on the planet? How much easier would it have been for them to maybe overcome some of their addiction? So it's interesting how my love for their art was more in a young age, and now my love for understanding their resilience and their struggle and kind of looping it back and studying them in a different way, that kind of is what leads me to the work I do. My goal is to really work with even more of the influencers and artists in our community to make it cool and make it fly and make it hip, to own your stuff and to really heal it so that you can actually live a longer, fuller life and share more art rooted in positivity. So I guess, history repeats itself. So yeah, they're still inspiring me and giving me new lessons to this day.
I think you touched on a point that I'm always doing, because some of my biggest people that I aspire to be or aspire is Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and people of that nature. And when I was younger, I would always gravitate to those kind of people. But now, as I'm older, now I'm like, oh, okay, it hits a little bit different since I'm older. I'm close to their age when they passed away. Now I'm looking at them men totally different. I'm like, okay, I can see why they did this and did that, and I can understand it fully now because I'm older and I'm more mature. So I can definitely understand where you come from when you said that, and you getting that inspiration because you really want to become better. Man, that is so awesome that you just keep on getting inspired by the same people that already was inside you, and you have that energy to kind of pull that together and really broaden it out to what you're doing now. So where can we kind of follow up with you or like see what you're doing? Do you have a website or something?
Absolutely. So my website is missmarianna.today. And if you go to missmarianna.today, you can get linked up with all the different tentacles on social media, from Instagram to Facebook and things like that. A lot of the work that I do, it takes place with a lot of social workers, a lot of college campuses, a lot of workshops and trainings, but I also do one-on-one mental health consulting. And I like to tell people a lot, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, and that's actually what's been working for me. I'm a mental health first aider. And what that means is a lot of the times people are struggling with their mental and emotional health, and they want to get on some of the personal development necessary to overcome, but they're not quite ready to go straight to a psychologist or a psychiatrist because there's a lot of systemic distrust, especially for Black community members, especially for people from the African diaspora, marginalized community members. We've gone through a lot of issues in terms of having systemic distrust. So you hear people saying, get counseling, get therapy. And then when we're directed to these systems that have historically done us a lot of harm, people are a little bit, stuck on how to pursue that without feeling like they will be, like more wrongdoing will be done. And so I'm kind of that buffer in between, being very down to earth and having enough trauma-informed care to work with people to get them grounded, to at least open their mind, open their heart, open their spirit to the possibility of moving forward and getting, traditional therapy. But definitely the practitioner skills that I extend are non-traditional. And I think with that, that's what people are expressing makes them feel more comfortable, because they're like, wow, you're like the auntie I never had, or the cousin I, never had. And I'm very comfortable with this. And that's a big part of my message, is making people aware that there are a lot more people of color. There are a lot more women. There are a lot more folks out there who are culturally responsive getting into mental health and emotional health. So don't be afraid. We'll honor the fact that that's what you know. But part of my role is helping to, normalize being open-minded to therapy in all its forms from all the different types of practitioners that are out there. So like I said, I'm a mental health first aider, but a lot of your average social workers have different levels of certification in mental health and emotional health and therapy. Then you do have psychologists and psychiatrists who have the formal training to do the diagnosis, medication if necessary. So we all show up in different ways, but my job is to help people just open their mind to the possibility. If you got to start with me on that spectrum of mental health to help you become comfortable with that, so that you can open your understanding to maybe going a step further and finding the right match that'll help you long-term if necessary. That's what I'm here for. And I thoroughly enjoy doing it. A lot of the activities that I do are like trauma timelines, that inner child work, helping people to kind of be a personal detective to connect, oh, this happened to me at this time in my life, which is why this is showing up in these decisions or my attitude or my disposition. And once people can make that connection, it's a lot easier to go through life and manage some of the anxiety and the depression that happens as a result of maybe some of those issues that happen in our lifetime along with our development. Yeah.
Yes, I know you have a book. You got to tell us about this book and how we can get it, and then wouldn't that be a great tool to kind of help us out in a way too?
Yeah, so it's a workbook. It's a trauma healing workbook. And I will share with you the title in the form of an acronym because it does have expressive vulgarity in it, and I don't want to scare folks away. But the reason why I did it this way is because if I said own your trauma, people would say, oh, that sounds dry and boring. So the title of the book is Own Your SHIT. And it's an acronym, which means some healing in there, because we all have some healing to do. I don't care how educated we are, how fine we are, how much money we have, how popular we are on social media, and how we pose our best life. We all came to this planet because it's a healing planet. And as a result of just navigating our way and our journey in life, things happen that can be very hurtful. And we come here with a certain amount of gifts or skills or talents, but we also come here with some trauma. So it's an interactive workbook. And as we go through some healing in there, there's charts, there's graphs, there's prompted questions, which makes it a little easier than just getting a journal and journaling, because sometimes we need to be prompted along the way. So what it does is it helps you to identify some of the causes of your trauma, the effects of your trauma, make distinct connections, and then make a commitment to get on a rehabilitation plan to either get with someone like me, who's a mental health practitioner, or to seek out more intense therapy, at least step out and find what will help you get on your journey to personal healing and development. How to pursue that without feeling like they will be, like more wrongdoing will be done. And so I'm kind of that buffer in between, being very down to earth and having enough trauma-informed care to work with people to get them grounded, to at least open their mind, open their heart, open their spirit to the possibility of moving forward and getting, traditional therapy. But definitely the practitioner skills that I extend are non-traditional. And I think with that, that's what people are expressing makes them feel more comfortable, because they're like, wow, you're like the auntie I never had, or the cousin I, never had. And I'm very comfortable with this. And that's a big part of my message, is making people aware that there are a lot more people of color. There are a lot more women. There are a lot more folks out there.
Yeah. Yes. And do you only have one book, or do you have another one as well?
Yeah, so I have that one for teenagers and young adults and adults. And then I also have a workbook called Super Safety Heroes. Outside of helping people with the safety of their heart and their mind, I'm also a big safety advocate of the physical body. And so a lot of the training I do, in addition to trauma-informed care, is public health and safety. And I teach on things like how to build a safety bag, the importance of having, emergency plans and crisis preparedness plans in place in your home, in your school, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, with your family members, and establishing those things. So the other workbook I have is for the littles. It's for the young kids. I would say kindergarten through about 6th grade. And Super Safety Heroes is centered around a young lady who, thinks nobody's really listening to her when she's talking about safety. And turns out that all her friends and her community members actually do value her. It's a coloring book, it's a storybook, and it also has activities for young people to heighten their awareness about the necessity of being, having safety awareness and crisis prevention with their friends, with their families, with their loved ones in their community. So it's a pretty cool project. I put it out earlier in the year, and it's done well. It's really nice to see that I have a tool for older folks who deal with the mind and the heart, but I also have something for the young folks too, to make them feel safer, especially after going through what we've experienced in the last year. We need to help our young people feel a little bit secure. We can't necessarily control everything in the macrocosm and the environment outside of us, but we can do what we can, the best we can, to fortify ourselves to make our lives a little bit more safe. So that's what Super Safety Heroes for the little people is all about.
Yes, I love it. I love that idea that you definitely said, hey, let's get the little people in there as well. So what made you think of that concept?
So, for the last 10 years, doing workshops and trainings for safety awareness and crisis prevention, what I notice is adults really don't listen until they're in a crisis. And a big thing that I have to teach in my trainings is like, hey, with this particular subject, you're either ready or not. And, I hear in our community, one thing that we say all the time is, you ain't got to get ready if you stay ready. But in the area of safety, prevention, and crisis awareness, I don't really see that a lot. And so I got kind of concerned with the fact that a lot of adults wait until they're in the midst of a crisis. And then that's when mentally and emotionally they break down. And the combination of not being prepared and not knowing how to manage themselves mentally and emotionally, the crisis actually gets worse. So, I work with a lot of young people as well. And I noticed, I was like, when young kids decide that they want to run out for a particular character that they like on TV or in the movies, the parents come along with them. And so I realized, you know what, instead of trying to whack adults over the head because they think they know everything and they'll just run to Walmart or Walgreens in the midst of an emergency, which we know that does not work because we saw what happened with toilet paper in the last year. Folks were ready to box. I realized, let me just take it to the kids, make it fun, make it cool, make it exciting. Because believe it or not, as much as us adults think we're here to influence the children, our children have just as much influence over us with the things that they're interested in. So I decided to really make sure to target, or I should say, include the children more and allow that to be the centerpiece of what adults are exposed through by way of learning from their kids.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This is beautiful. I loved everything that you said. I love everything that you stand for. It was a pleasure to definitely have you on this show and just giving everything that you gave us. Now, all you guys, I hope y'all paid attention. Y'all wrote down everything that she was talking about. Go get that workbook. Both workbooks for your little ones as well as for yourself. Yeah. So we can get our mental healthness together, because this is something that's very, very, very important in our community, and we need to help each other out the best way we know how. All right. It was a pleasure to really interview you and actually get to know you this short time. I got to bring you back and see if we can get you any updates, anything else. All right. So you have anything else to say?
Well, just thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your platform, right? Because that's what it's about. It's like a domino effect. I think a lot of us are always, standing as individuals, try to make it, and we forget the power of just sharing our light and our energy with each other. So thank you for being open and giving me the invitation to share. And we connected now. So once you're in my network, expect to know that when I have projects, I will be calling to extend opportunities for you to share as well. So thank you for having me, and good day, good night, good morning, good evening, wherever you are watching. Make sure to work on your mental and emotional health, the safety of not just your mind, not just your heart, but your body as well. So thank you for having me.
All right. And we out. Peace. Hi. Thank you for tuning in. That was an episode of Power Talks DA. I'm glad that you joined in. Please spread the word. Also, we have our Instagram page that you can comment and say, hey, I love that topic and I wanted to discuss it more. Or you can just leave us a DM if you have a commercial or if you want to be interviewed on this show. That is all I have for you today. Y'all have a lovely and blessed week. See you next week. Tune in. Peace and love.